Good morning. Commissioners, Chief Moore, Mr. Teefank, Madam Secretary, Mr. Inspector General Mark Smith, Mr. City Attorney Carlos De La Guerra, and members of the public. Today is Tuesday, January 9th, 2023. It's 9:40 a.m. 2024. Thank you. My apologies. Thank you. This is a regular meeting of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Good morning. Please let the record reflect Commissioners Suthers, Calanche, and Garcia are present, and we have a quorum.
Thank you. We welcome everyone attending this morning. The Police Commission is committed to ensuring equal access to its meetings. It is requested that individuals who require the services of a translator contact the board secretary no later than the day preceding the meeting. Whenever possible, a translator will be provided. Sign language interpreters, assistive listening devices, or other auxiliary aids and/or services may be provided upon request. To ensure availability, you are advised to make your request at least 72 hours prior to the meeting you wish to attend. All public comment will be heard during item number 2 on the agenda. We will dedicate a total of 45 minutes to public comment. Members of the public will have 1 minute per agenda item for a maximum of 2 minutes total. At the request of the speaker will be given an additional minute for general public comment for a maximum of 3 minutes total. The order of speakers will be a speaker in the room will go first, then we will take a speaker watching today's meeting on Zoom. We will alternate between speakers in the room and Zoom for a total of 45 minutes. Members of the public who participate in public comment are reminded that they can speak to any item on the agenda or a matter within the jurisdiction of the Board of Police Commissioners. Public comment is your opportunity to address the board, so you are free to express your opinion on matters before the board and to generally express when you disagree with others' opinions expressed. However, directing your comments to other individuals who have spoken or attacking others who have expressed their opinions shall be deemed off topic and your public comment period will be concluded. Members of the public, if you choose to participate in public comment portion of the agenda, you can participate in this meeting several ways outlined on the agenda. Message for those attending the meeting in person. These meetings are regular meetings between the board, the department, and key stakeholders. Meetings of the Board of the Police Commissioners are open to the public. The state's Ralph M. Brown Act affords the public the opportunity to be present at the meetings, hear the presentations and dialogue in real time, and provide feedback via the public comment period. During these meetings, there's a need for the board to carry out the public business expeditiously without delays or disruptions. Members of the audience shall not engage in any conduct which causes an actual disruption of the meeting. Those attending in person are reminded that disruptive behavior will be cause for removal. If you disrupt this meeting, will be provided only one warning to cease disruptive behavior. If you fail to cease such behavior, you will be removed from the meeting. While in the boardroom, members of the audience must be seated. Standing is not permitted. At this time, we will move to item number 1, the report of the Chief of Police. Chief Moore.
Good morning, Commissioner President Suthers, as well as Commissioner Calanche, Commissioner Garcia. Happy New Year as we enter 2024. I also want to welcome and say good morning to our Inspector General, as well as our City Attorney, Carlos De La Guerra. I'm going to change the order, if you will, this morning. I'm going to start first with categorical use of force, give an overall state as to the year-end results, and then speak briefly about our year-end crime, and then most recently what we've seen this last week, plus as we enter 2024, and then our personnel strength. In regards to not categorical uses of force, there were no categorical investigations since we last met that has resulted in a total for the year of 34 officer-involved shootings versus 31 in 2022. There were 16 fatal officer-involved shootings in 2023 versus 14 in 2022. The department, as it has since 2015, is formulating and compiling the stats and various analysis of all uses of force in the organization, whether it be an officer-involved shooting or a non-categorical or lesser level of use of force, as well as including demographics about those involved in this, in those instances, and the outcome of those investigations. This annual use of force report will be completed within the next 60 days and be brought before the Commission. In its analysis will be a breakdown of each officer-involved shooting, as well as negligent discharges, categorical use of force such as a leery or law enforcement-related injuries, and so forth. This report, once presented to the commission, will, for its review, the organization will then welcome questions and look to input and feedback from the commission, as well as the public, and then return at a later date and provide further analysis and further details in response to questions and inquiries regarding the use of force in the Los Angeles Police Department. In regards to our crime picture, similar to our use of force report, the department each year produces a year summary of its initiatives, its strategies, its tactics, as well as the results in regards to community safety and particularly in regards to our year-end crime picture. Excuse me. This year, on January 24th, we'll be holding a press conference to provide that report. So it'll be handed out, it'll be available also electronically, and in it will contain specific details, the goals and strategies that were utilized, the results of those, what worked, what didn't work, as well as what our efforts and initiatives will be for 2024. In summary, overall, 2023, we saw a 3.2% reduction in violent crime. These reductions occurred in each of the categories of violent crime. Specifically, 65 fewer homicides, which is a more than 16% reduction, and 127 fewer shooting victims. Additionally, in regards to success in that area, was the significant portion of those fewer homicides, 55% of them, were persons who were experiencing homelessness. In regards to property crime, it was a different picture. We saw a 3.5% increase, driven primarily by various thefts, personnel thefts, other type thefts, including retail thefts, which increased 16% this year over this in 2023 versus 2022. Also, auto thefts increased 2%, and burglaries increased just over 1% from the previous year. Overall, the impact of particularly the various thefts, drove the overall Part 1 crime increase of 1.9%. That's 2,587 additional Part 1 crimes. Again, as a reminder for the public, these are FBI-driven identification of stats or categories of crime, and there is not a one-to-one relationship, meaning that violent crime, obviously a much more serious offense, much more impactful on victims' lives and their families, is disproportionately underrepresented in regards to simpler matters such as a personal theft, someone stealing a cell phone or is taking an item from an individual. Personal thefts outnumber any other category of Part 1 crimes. So with this, I'm proud of the work, and I want to bring this to attention to the public today because while there's this last week particularly has been troubling in regards to the violence that we've seen in the city, the overall work of this department has been productive in reducing violent crime. Additionally, I'm proud of the work and the strategies in bolstering the public safety and the public's trust in our efforts of outreach and engagement. I believe that that engagement has been improved because of lessons learned and strategies employed by our community safety partnership over the past decade. In addition to seeing a double-digit reduction in shooting violence across its 10 sites, the CSP model has helped inform our local commands on strategies that have expanded critical community engagement and ownership in working to improve community safety. Now, also critical in this is that this department does not work in a silo or alone. It's been critical that we've received the support of Mayor Bass and the City Council to rebuild our staffing, to replace worn-out equipment and modernize our technology, and provide added resources during this time that has improved our effectiveness. Additionally, Mayor Bass's work in deepening investment and adding gang interventionists and programming has also been critical in quelling further street violence and saving lives. We saw this particularly during the summer months in the South Los Angeles area, where we saw a spat of gang-related violence in which these interventionists and community ambassadors and the added staffing that was brought to bear by the mayor's office helped quell retaliations. And most recently, we've seen this with a double homicide that occurred at a New Year's Eve party in Newton area, where individuals that were shot, 2 that were murdered, had ties back to communities in which these gang interventionists and community gang reduction specialists have played a critical role in preventing further acts of violence. Finally, the Mayor's Inside Safe initiative, which our department has fully supported, has provided significant expanded interim and permanent housing, identifying and removing our most dangerous and entrenched encampments. And with that, we've seen cleaner streets, but also safer communities, as we see a double-digit reduction in crime involving homeless individuals and 36 fewer homicide victims, as I referenced earlier. That's 55% of the overall reduction in homicide victims are persons who were houseless from the previous years in numbers. Much work remains, with gun violence still well above the pre-pandemic levels, as well as property crime. Additionally, and troubling, 2023 saw increases year over year and from years earlier in traffic fatalities, particularly fatal hit and runs, as well as fatal pedestrian and bicyclist collisions. This last year, we actually saw more fatal loss of life, let me be clear, regarding a traffic collision than homicides in the city of Los Angeles. That is something that is occurring, a phenomenon that is occurring across the country. But here in Los Angeles, I've spoken, and Deputy Chief Donald Graham of Transit Services Bureau has been working with our specialists as well as with our community, transportation community partners in identifying specific initiatives that will address this head-on in 2024. And I look forward to our press conference on the 24th and discussing this matter further. This morning, I wanted to call out the results of the hard work of everyone involved, whether it's our elected officials, our community partners, our gang interventionists, our communities themselves, as well as the men and women of this organization, and in going at and identifying those that are involved in this violence, those that are terrorizing our communities, and also in our engagement to build and bolster the resilience of our communities. That success needs to be called out. While also, I'm aware of the critical need that there's no victory lap here. Just last night, we had a 16-year-old male and a 17-year-old friend who were shot while playing basketball. And the 16-year-old lost his life in the San Fernando Gardens, the Community Safety Partnership site. 2 nights ago, 2 men were shot and killed in the southeast area in what we believe to be a gang-related shooting. And of course, I referenced earlier the New Year's Eve, a man and woman were killed while attending an underground party in the Newton area with 8 additional individuals shot. And on that same night, tragically, a family of 4 was struck by an intoxicated driver in South Los Angeles, killing the father, the mother, and a 5-year-old daughter, leaving a 2-year-old behind. In response to each of these tragedies, our people, I believe, who are dedicated professionals, have done everything possible to work to identify those responsible and bring them before the criminal justice system. In their work, they've also relied upon and benefited from our other partners in the public safety net, including our gang interventionists, community partners like the Watts Gang Task Force, our elected leaders, and our other law enforcement partners. Again, on the 24th, I'll bring additional details, and we'll have further conversations. Certainly, I welcome questions about this, and I'll have much more information, including analysis and reporting on our hate crimes, which we saw just yesterday, an individual arrested and directly responsible for what we believe to be 17 instances in the San Fernando Valley of vandalism, believed to initially potentially motivated by hate. Later, it's been identified, we believe, that his motivation may involve mental illness and may involve some delusions involving other members of his family, and that these locations were not targeted because of a religious hate. However, I am grateful for one of the community's members that a business owner himself had been earlier struck, that based on information provided by Major Crimes Division and a community alert and an image of the individual, notified us. Our Temecula officers responded, identified the individual, and in his arrest and subsequent interview, we are confident that this is the individual responsible for these 17 instances, as well as his motivation, and that matter is now before the District Attorney's Office for felony filing consideration. Finally, in regards to our personnel strength, we stand essentially with no change from our earlier report of 8,969 sworn personnel. We have 2,627 civilian professionals, which is a reduction of 7 from my last report. And there's no change in our reserve officers, who stand at 443, volunteers at 2,298, and I'm grateful for our counselors and chaplains, which stand at 38. That concludes my report, and I welcome any questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And I'll go to Commissioner Kalanche for any questions or comments.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Just more overarching kind of questions around goals for the year. If you can, touch a little bit upon our strategies or goals to address some of the mental health concerns and response and what we're doing to ensure that that particular area of our work is growing and that it's more effective, since that was a huge concern last year. Just what are you thinking for this year?
So we stand ready to continue to bolster our SMART teams with mental health professionals from the Department of Mental Health. The largest challenge we have in regards to mental health issues, I believe, in this city is really shared across this country, and that is appropriate facilities for inpatient as well as outpatient support of those experiencing chronic or acute mental health instances or circumstances. Law enforcement's interaction with that, I'm encouraged over these last few years that we've seen alternative services that have been identified on D.D. Hirsch, as well as programs such as the Circle program and others that are alternatives that we're redirecting calls away from law enforcement, allowing us to stay focused on our primary mission and allowing more relevant and trained professionals to deal with the lower level issues that community members as well as others call, typically and historically have called 911. While recognizing that there are instances across the city involving mental health episodes that result in violence, that result in individuals being attacked, that require a presence of a police and a police response. That's where it's critical that our ongoing training and development of our personnel to understand the instances of mental health crises, the symptoms, the presentation, and the strategies to effectively strive to de-escalate and safely resolve those situations remain pivotal in our work. And our focus is both, again, bolstering the staffing so that more of this work can be handled by the appropriate professionals rather than police and fire, and simultaneously recognizing that inevitably there'll be a portion of this that will remain with law enforcement. And so the training, the qualifications, the performance of our people must remain as sharp as possible so that their response through tens of thousands of instances, which today are handled without remark and without any ill outcome to officers or others, but those outliers, those individual failures or shortcomings that we've seen and that we saw this last year, that our commitment is to do everything possible to avoid those from reoccurring. So our commitment going forward into 2024 will be continue to advocate for the added deepening and broadening of alternative services, as well as ensuring and bolstering the capabilities and resilience of our people with the tools, the tactics, the values to go out and do the difficult work that some of these episodes can represent. I'm grateful that these last 5 years we spent and invested through the foundation and other resources, training such as the virtual reality system that is specifically focused on this and has trained more than 1,200 of our personnel, specifically instances of dealing with persons experiencing a mental health crisis and what the expected path of working through those effectively are in a dynamic situation, so that it's not a program where they already know the answers, so to speak, but they've got to deal with a live avatar to counter officers' techniques and to build resilience and build that muscle memory so that when they see or potentially exposed to that in the real world, they have the best opportunity of seeing a successful outcome, which is something they want, and certainly this organization, and I know our community desires as well.
Thank you. And additionally, since I've been on the commission, one of the things that the commission has focused on is our response or our tactics around edge weapons. And I know that that's been really important for us. Any thoughts on improved training or continuous training? Because I think that has resulted in situations that with outcomes that that don't always work out the way we want them
Right.
to work out. But I just wanted to reiterate how important that has been to the commission.
So you're right. It's both tools as well as tactics and training. On the tools standpoint, this last year, we've continued our efforts to find alternatives so the officers have tools in their hands that can deal with dangerous individuals, violent individuals, potentially violent individuals. The tools such as the bolo wrap, the effort of the department to pilot the Taser 10, which offers greater standoff distance and a higher expected rate of effectiveness, so officers do not have to escalate beyond a less lethal tool or this intermediate force device and have to resort to deadly force. That has been work, as well as training, such as our themes of let it work, raise, time and distance, the critical thinking training that we're giving officers to create time and distance, which we know as that expands, officers have, from a position of safety, have the greater potential of overcoming a very challenging circumstance of a person with an edged weapon or otherwise presenting an imminent danger to the officers.
Thank you, Chief.
Oh, let me answer one last thing. I'm also proud of the work of the organization and this commission because there's also an accountability loop here. And that is that when we fall short, that we call that out. I reflect back over these years that as we continue to work on lessening our instances of deadly force and improving outcomes, that a part of that is training tools, selecting the right people, but also an accountability loop. And I'm proud of the work that is done. I believe that accountability is there.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you, Chief. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
So you mentioned a few questions based on some of the things you mentioned. The Taser pilot program, how many Tasers are out now, and do we expect to increase that in 2024?
So the procurement was 850. We're putting them in 4 areas. I believe they're being delivered in the last 3 weeks. I'll have to circle back with you as far as the actual deployment in the field. This was a contract that I believe was approved in either October or November, and now working with the vendor to get the requisite devices out. So, but it is our ambition in the first quarter to certainly have them out and begin gaining experience with their effectiveness.
Okay. And then regarding sworn officers, so there was no change from the last time. Can you share a little bit of why that is? Is just there was no class, or is recruitment?
Well, our current effort to hire 60 personnel, sworn personnel, recruits each 4 weeks is falling short by about 50%. And so our work remains. And coming on Friday, we'll have a graduation of just 22 recruits. Our attrition rate, it is my hope that and desire that with the recently approved contract, a multi-year contract that Mayor Bass sponsored and led, supported by the council, is going to help retain our personnel. When we saw the increase in attrition from 2020 to 2023, 85% who left above our normal attrition of about 500 people had 2 to 8 years on the job, 2 to 10 years on the job, and were being drawn to other agencies. We believe that increasing the incentives and demonstrating the commitment to the wellness and well-being of our personnel will help retain those individuals and keep them from finding alternatives in other agencies that are still very much actively soliciting and attempting to draw our personnel from us. On the recruitment side, it still is, we've seen an increase in interest level. We have about 250 personnel that we believe are what we call a tier 1 that appear to be qualified and now need to go through the background process. That number needs to be higher. So we need to attract more qualified individuals. Our outreach and engagement is ongoing on a multifaceted stream, and we're coming to the final throes, if you will, of a marketing agreement, which will be able to utilize and capitalize on the funding that the city has provided, as well as the Police Foundation, to let individuals know that we are hiring. This is a challenge that we're seeing both in our sworn and civilian professional staff, as well as the city overall, to hire public servants, and we're seeing across the region and the country. Our commitment is to be that, to make that difference in the sense of attracting and retaining, but also ensuring the process itself is efficient. And I think that last leg, we've got more work to do it, in my view, still is taking far too long to process and hire a qualified applicant. Some of it, I hear, is the reticence or the temperament of the recruit themselves, that they're going through this 7-step process. They are not the most aggressive, if you will, if perhaps from times earlier, but I also believe the process still remains far too bureaucratic and takes far too long to go through.
Thank you.
Chief, thank you for the report. Just a few things. I want to go back to Commissioner Kalanche regarding alternatives to police response, armed response. I know that one of the challenges there is hiring more clinicians. Last year, we had a very comprehensive report on the thousands of patrol officers' hours saved because of these resources. So obviously, hiring clinicians is one challenge, but one thing I think might be useful for the public, and you mentioned officer training, but more importantly, dispatch training. They're the ones who triage these calls to decide who's going to respond, how dangerous it is. Is it possible to have a presentation by dispatch in this coming year to make the public more aware and better educated with regards to how that decision's made and who actually shows up?
Absolutely. In addition to the police service representatives and the call in a very well-established decision tree to ensure that these calls are screened and properly assessed. We also now are aided by Dee Dee Hirsch and trained professionals there that have helped us as we hand off potential suicidal or people experiencing a mental health crisis, as well as outreach and engagement with the Circle program and its leadership to identify program or types of calls in which an alternative dispatch to their program and their sites is also the most appropriate first effort. Now, in each of those, to the public, we want you to know that we recognize that every instance is not going to work out that way. That it may go to that resource, that outreach provider, and it not fit their abilities. And what we have assured is that in each of these referrals that there's a circle back, that there's a feedback loop to us so that the public's underlying need is being met and that it's not referred out to another agency or someone else and then the ball is dropped and that community safety concern is allowed to fester or grow. But we're happy to, in the next first quarter, work with you and Mr. T-Fank to organize that presentation.
Great, thank you. And I look forward to your press conference on the 24th. I'm sure I'll be joining you.
Yes.
Regarding particularly traffic fatalities. I believe New Year's Eve, we had 4 traffic fatalities within hours that evening, involving, unfortunately, several people. But it does seem that as we look at the fatalities that seem to occur almost on a daily basis now, that the contributing factor is almost always speed. Is there anything that's being done now or that we anticipate being done to address the speed issue?
Well, one of the pilot efforts that the city is now a partner in across the state is the use of speed radar. And so it is a matter not managed by the department, it's actually managed by our partner, the Department of Transportation, to use speed radar as an awareness tool. There are citations, I understand, administrative citations that are related to that program to have a consequence, if you will, to the offender. So I think that's one strategy that is worthwhile. I also applaud the work of DOT and traffic engineers to find ways in which to dampen the speed of traffic. However, we also recognize that the greatest number of fatalities at times by concentration are in streets that are narrow and that are not the wide, expansive areas that we see, for instance, in the San Fernando Valley with multiple lanes and center medians, but are relatively narrow streets. In fact, when we look at the traffic fatality with the loss of those 3 family members, that occurred of a motorist fleeing through a stop sign on 60th Place, which was not a wide street at all. So there's some engineering, I think, that can help. And what we're looking at these high injury networks, we look to see what are the underlying pedestrian patterns, cyclist patterns, as well as motor vehicles. But there's also a role for law enforcement, and there's a role for consequences for individuals that are engaged in reckless activities, including we had a fatality on the 6th Street Bridge for a sideshow or street racing, as well as these DUIs. And we are in the Office of Traffic Safety from the California Department of Officer of Traffic Safety. They have provided us grants, which we continue to outperform any other agency in California with the use of those grants effectively to identify intoxicated and impaired drivers that pose a real risk. more than 1,300 people died last year in the state of California to an intoxicated driver. And that's where our enforcement is critical, and as is the enforcement of people who are involved in these collisions with serious penalties. And that's why the 3 murder counts that were filed against the driver who killed that family, those family members, and left behind that 2-year-old daughter. It's good to see that. It won't bring that family back, but people have to understand that their responsibilities in this area and the tragic outcome that it has on the lives of so many.
So Chief, last question. I believe in 2023, the state moved to pedestrians being able to cross mid-block outside. And again, as I look at the information that we get, it seems a number of people are being struck outside of the crosswalk. Is the state going to do any kind of analysis to see how that law has impacted or resulted in some perhaps unnecessary fatalities throughout the state?
Well, the increase in pedestrian deaths has actually been a phenomenon that has been going year after year. I believe much of it has to do with distracted driving, high-speed driving. Pedestrians, we have a concept with our personnel and with really every motorist is to use defensive driving. Don't rely upon engineering and road design and traffic controls to keep you safe. You can as a portion, but at the end of the day, you have to act defensively and recognize that there are distracted motorists or impaired motorists that are on our streets and that pose a real danger to your safety. Inside of a crosswalk certainly adds another measure of safety, but even inside a crosswalk, vehicle traveling, the pedestrian, whether they're intoxicated, whether they're impaired, or whether they're paying attention to their phone or something other than their surroundings. This is not the pedestrian's fault, but it is something that for the pedestrian and for the public that we educate, and there are traffic safety programs both at school as well as adult levels that we talk about the importance of walking and as a pedestrian taking defensive measures, bright clothing, lighting mechanisms and so forth at night so that you can be seen in sometimes undarkened streets and darkened streets and so forth.
Thank you, Chief. We'll move on to item number 2 on the agenda, public comment. Madam Secretary, would you please announce the first speaker?
The first speaker is Andrew Gravener.
All right, all items. So starting off with the chief's report, that should be limited to 3 minutes. If 3 minutes is enough time for everyone else to speak, it's enough time for him to speak. So if he needs, the 13 minutes or whatever that was to speak, we should get our 13 minutes to respond to him. Let's see. We have the consent agenda, paying reward money to snitches. We've got grants and donations again. Just funneling more money into the LAPD through any backdoor way you can think of. Let's see, what is this one even for? This is this is for overtime, it looks like. Let's see, it looks like it's for of course for providing security to religious institutions. Of course, the LAPD hasn't been handling any of this well. They go and brutalize anyone, protesting in support of the Palestinian people. Yeah. Let's see, we have a $14,000 donation from the Police Foundation, LAPD's corporate friends and sponsors, for a license plate camera. Apparently, one license plate camera is $14,000. Should be something you might want to pay attention to. Those things seem like they're really expensive, and they're just there to spy on people. Let's see. And you always talking about all that dangerous driving. Why do we constantly hear about LAPD officers driving around intoxicated? and, doing all these high-speed chases. That's putting people in danger, but you never say anything about that. Why aren't we hearing about that in the reports? All the people getting killed by high-speed chases through crowded streets, or LAPD cops found to be driving intoxicated while on duty. All that stuff. We have a donation for some horses. Looks like this is just some random guy in Bakersfield who's just donating, like selling a horse to the LAPD. So I guess, now you're just soliciting, things from just random guys in Bakersfield. And it's all really weird. Yeah.
Next on Zoom, we have caller ending 1264. Caller 1264, you're on. Okay, we'll move on to the next.
The next speaker, Edward Tolan Stinson Jr.
I'd like to wish everybody a Happy New Year's. God be with them. Okay, my name is Stinson Edward Tolan Jr. And I want to, I wrote a book, God Works a Miracle. It's on Amazon. And my son ripped me off of the house, and the 3 credit bureaus got everything backwards. They took my house there, took my car, took everything what I had. And Bank of America did the same thing. And then I went to 77th Police Station, and they told me they didn't want to hear about all this. They started yelling at me, so, I told them in 2005. So the credit union, not that credit union, but they need to be investigated. Your credit report, and they're the one who messed up and got all my credit report all completely wrong, and it's completely wrong. And if I can help somebody, I will help somebody, because this is not right. And like for instance, the agency, you call them up, they play games with you, So here's some documents I got it certified. And here's some paperwork, and the assessor's office downtown at the mailing papers downtown to the assessor's the mail room, and they need to be investigated. That's how they take people's property and stuff like that. And my son's name is Stinson Tolan. He just put Stinson Tolan, and he didn't put the Stinson Edward Tolan III down there. And he got all my information on this paperwork. It doesn't belong to me. So, I just want to help somebody, and so this would happen to nobody else. And I wish the police commissioner to check into that, because it's completely wrong, and the attorney general look into it, because I've been down there once before, and they found this, and this need to be.
Sir, so if you would, I have a detective that's going to meet you right back here. He's wearing the dark suit there, and we'll look to see what we can do as far as our investigation of this, or if there's an appropriate, more appropriate referral that we can help try to get you
Let
help.
me explain this to you. I hope you're concerned, because you wouldn't let this happen to your family and stuff like that, because God looking down on all of us.
I'm sorry for your loss. And again, he will help you and see if there's something we can do further on this, or if there's an appropriate referral, another agency that can bring you assistance.
Next, we have John Banza.
Hello?
Hi, what items would you like to speak on? Hello?
All of them.
Okay, 3 minutes.
All right, so this is actually Jason Reedy. Again, I have to call in under a different name if I'm going to get called on. So I'm wondering, What justification was provided to deploy the LAPD's quadruped unmanned ground vehicle, aka the robot dog, at the third annual Winter Wonderland event, a spectacle put on by the Council District 2 in partnership with LAPD that happened on December 16th? This is from your own policy on the use of the robot dog. The QUGV robot will only be deployed in limited number of scenarios such as incidents involving active shooters, assessment of explosives, hostage situations, natural disasters, hazardous material assessments, search and rescue missions, and barricaded suspects. So I'm wondering, Chief Moore, where does a Winter Wonderland event fall amongst these types of high-risk situations that the department spoke about during the approval process? Kowalski came on here, harped about full transparency around the use of the robot dog, not only in front of this commission, but at City Council. And so this department needs to release information on why the deployment of this dog at an event aimed at children was necessary, because it wasn't. But we see you for who you really are. Your own Sergeant Mark Austin said that this event helps recruit for your youth programs, serves to build trust within communities, and form a better bond. And so every once in a while, the LAPD will admit that they prey on our children. Countless examples of why police should be nowhere near children are out there. I mean, even the president of this commission, Errol Southers, still hasn't taken responsibility for his role in founding the infamous Santa Monica POW program that allowed for over 200 children to be molested. Going back to the robot dog, on November 8th, 2022, when speaking about his acquisition in front of this cowardly commission, Moore stated that he explicitly prohibited the use of robot dog in public settings and explicitly named that it would not be used in patrol, outreach, or engagement settings. Yet within 6 months of acquiring this robot dog, the LAPD already broke its own policy, right? Just as many of the people that you deride and chastise during these commission meetings said you would. Now, speaking of technology and transparency, it's 2024 and there isn't a single place on the LAPD website that provides a yearly breakdown on the number of shootings and killings by this department. If you look at your OIS pages, they only go back to 2017. So if a community member like myself wanted to gather information on shootings in 2013 or say even 2003, I'd have to visit a website or websites that aggregate that information over time, or even scour and comb through news articles to find information. Same goes for in-custody deaths. T-Stank, send me an update on my records request, as you should have already done. And that is it. I will see you motherfuckers next week. Fuck the LAPD and fuck this commission.
And
The next
Commissioner Suthers,
speaker, please.
if I might, just given the last caller's expression regarding the use.
Ma'am, one person's going to speak. Allow the chief to speak. This is your first and only warning.
In
Thank you,
regards
Chief.
to, I'm sorry, in regards to the last callers and his concerns regarding the use of the display of that robot, when I learned of this as the chain of command brought it to my attention, a corrective action was taken involving the actions of that element member. The member was on a static display, meaning that he brought the equipment and was there to talk and discuss with parents and others. And at the urging of a senior member of a council district, was asked to bring it out for purposes of just display. And he made a mistake, plain and simple. It was not something that his chain of command supported, authorized, or condoned. And we immediately took actions to ensure that that was clear and understood. I apologize for the fact that our earlier statements and expectations were not followed, and we intend for this to be the last instance of such a failure. But it is, when we get it wrong, we got to own it. And so to the last caller, I acknowledge that happened, and we're committed to ensuring it does not reoccur.
Thank you, Chief. Madam Secretary, next speaker.
The next speaker is Audrey.
Thanks to Jason for bringing that up. As we know, the CSP causes great harm and things like that. The person who did bring that out was just adding to all of the actions that attempt to obfuscate the real harm caused by CSP. And speaking of CSP, I wonder if it was counted as a homicide that Luis Espinoza was murdered by a CSP officer speeding in their cruiser on December 8th, running an errand with lights flashing, running an errand for a sports team affiliated with LAPD, murdered Luis Espinoza, a pedestrian. And I wonder, do you count that as a homicide or just an unfortunate accident? And it was just ironic hearing you talk about drivers, careless drivers, distracted drivers, speeding drivers, and one of your own officers murdered somebody in that manner. I want to ask Mark Smith. I've asked this before. I looked it up, and you're earning more than $250,000 a year. Among your duties, according to the website, are supposed to be reviewing all department investigations into officer-involved shootings, in-custody deaths, and uses of force that result in admission to a hospital. That you're supposed to take complaints of misconduct against LAPD officers and monitor the department's investigations into such complaints for thoroughness. That your function is to prevent and detect fraud, waste, abuse, misconduct, and mismanagement. We don't hear word one ever about anything you do. All of the murders by LAPD of people with mental health crises, all of the people murdered who have edged weapons or cell phones. And if you investigate, if you do anything to follow up on these, make sure that this horrible racist system gets fixed, even though we know it can't be fixed. What do you do? I would just love to know, do you really serve a function? And I hope sometime you will address that. And Chief Moore, it was just interesting to note that in your whole report, you didn't mention anything about that robot dog and how it was brought out for the little kitties to pet it or whatever, to just lose fear of it, even though it might kill them someday.
Next, we have Betty Lay.
Good morning.
Good morning. What items would you like to speak on?
Chief's report, agenda items, public comment, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Well, first off, you all know that I support Chief Moore and his report. I support agenda items 3B, 3C, 3D. And as far as department training takes place, several times a year, officers are trained consistently in different categories throughout the year. That is the truth. And it's ongoing at all times, every year. And I want everyone to stay safe and stay healthy. And I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
The next speaker, please, Michelle Dumont.
Since this is a police oversight commission, why didn't one of you ask him what the consequences were to this person who, against orders, brought this robot dog to a party to show to children? Why didn't any of you ask what was the penalty? None of you did. You don't care. You just simply don't care. Okay, also, get the research, friends. Stop asking about training. Training has been proven in police departments not to do anything, to change anything. It doesn't work. They're internally trained and they have this muscle memory. Grab your gun and shoot. That's all they need to know for the most part. this woman who was driving this car that killed this 26-year-old man. I can answer Audrey's questions. You never count killing with their autos as a killing or a murder. You don't count it. It doesn't get recorded. It doesn't get investigated in the same way, I am positive, because you people should be investigating that, because that woman was doing something that she should not have been doing, and she probably, as he described, was a distracted driver. So get on to it. Don't leave it there. And this whole meeting is a disgrace. It's a conflict of interest for you to have a civilian oversight meeting in the headquarters of the agency that you're overseeing, surrounded by cops. That is a conflict of interest for you. And it's a threat to the public, a continuing threat to the public. Don't you dare insist that we really hold these people accountable, because these cops will get you. This is not fun and games. This is life and death. People are dying all the time. And by the way, he wants alternative services to be held by the police department. We do not want that. We don't want them trained in anything related to helping people who are having a mental health crisis, or who are suicidal, or who might even be on drugs. We don't want them involved. No involvement of the police department. Keep them out of that. But you've got so much work to do on yourselves, it's disgraceful.
Next, we have Steve Rogers.
Good morning.
Good morning. What items would you like to speak on?
All items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
First, I'd like to wish the entire LAPD, everyone hearing the sound of my voice, and the entire public a happy, healthy, safe new year. The chief went over the use of force issue. For people listening, and I'm sure the people that need to hear this are not listening, there's one thing you should do with the police when you encounter them, that's cooperate, okay? Even if you think something is not quite right, cooperate. Otherwise, you create a situation where force may be used and you may be hurt or ultimately lose your life. Cooperate. That's really basic. If you need to make a complaint to a supervisor, do that at another time. If you need to address issues, do that, but cooperate. Enforcement of the law, 403 PC, 236 PC. If you don't know them, you should look them up. 403, 236. We have many laws. We have the California Penal Code. We have the California Vehicle Code. We have the Los Angeles Municipal Code. We have the Health and Safety Code. Okay, the laws are only good if they're enforced. And our laws are only good as the politicians who enforce them. You need to support LAPD, the officers out there on the streets, to enforce the law, to be proactive. The issue of edged weapons was brought up. Kalancha, I'm talking to you. Look up Dan Inosanto, the great Filipino martial artist, okay? He has a video out there on edged weapons. Edged weapons are no joke, okay? Watch the video. You really need to educate yourselves and go out there on ride-alongs. I don't know how many of the police commissioners have gone on. And by the way, there are only 3 out of 5 police commissioners, and the meeting was started late. That's not auspicious for a beginning to the new year. So go out there with the SMART team, go out there with mental health professional and the officer, and find out what's going on before you start making recommendations on certain things. Good report by the chief today. I have to say, when you do a good report, it should be acknowledged and should take as much time as you need to be able to make your report. Information is power. On that note, probably the website needs to be improved and updated. These meetings need to be maybe at a different time. The place is fine, but the time needs to include people who are going to work. 9:30 on a Tuesday morning is not the ideal time. Many people have mentioned this. I know you're going to be moving around the city. I think that's a good move. traffic collisions and that sort of thing. Okay, you need more traffic enforcement. You need to support the officers in traffic enforcement. One thing you could do for pedestrian safety, use pedestrian railings like they do in Hong Kong, for example. I'll just use Chinatown as an example. On Broadway, railings so people have to.
The next speaker, please, Jonathan Foster.
Hello, Jonathan Foster. This is a recording of a friend of the LAPD, but I've got 5 names of dead people: Jessica Brown, Takar Smith, Keenan Anderson, Michael Meadows. And this starts with Valentina Peralta at the Burlington. The police word means the LAPD.
Let's go to Jonathan. Jonathan, welcome to Leo. Hey, straight bullet, all wet Terrell. Do you think that's okay that they shot the girl with the stray bullet at the Burlington? Do you think that that's... Hey, goodbye. Get him on the phone. Get him on the phone. Get him on the phone. You see, that's a police hater. That's why we cut him off.
What a two-faced liar.
He's a cop hater.
That's
and
not
when
true.
we get to Susan Sarandon, you might want to enjoy...
He calls himself a civil rights attorney, proceeded to completely assault me through the radio. I know he tried to do something with civil rights, doing ride-alongs with the LAPD, lawyerisms and stuff. I didn't call up as a police hater. I called up the police and made a mistake. LAPD Jones disregarded commands from higher rank. Oh, it's all wet Terrell. That's your new name forever. All wet. Let's be sure the stray bullet doesn't hit you and kill you and you find out the officer was doing the wrong thing. Because the officer was doing the wrong thing. That's why somebody's dead. Somebody that shouldn't die have been killed. Somebody that didn't need to die did die. Because the officer was doing the wrong thing. So, Jones shot 3 times. I thought he could have shot once. And he shot a suspect that was not armed with a gun. He was armed with a bike chain and a bike lock, but he was fleeing. Okay, so Valentina Peralta's dead. Now, 2 that are, to me, on the other side of the line. Jessica Brown, still not armed with a gun. Officer shot 3 times, maybe could have shot once. Maybe could have been different. Michael Meadows, so there's the end of a traffic stop. They're wrapping up the Michael Meadows comes around the corner with the gun shooting, and the officer shoots him. To me, that's who needs to be shot. It's unfortunate. Every one of these people are really unfortunate. But Takar Smith is on the ground on his knees, doesn't also have a gun, but he was shot with a gun. Keenan Anderson had a car accident. He was killed with a taser, but he was not armed with a gun. But he still was killed. So these are the things you talked about. Are you trying to get better? I think you're trying. There are a lot of things here. What about the days that the LAPD did excellent work? Okay, you talked about that kind of stuff. These particular ones, even today, this officer shot this gentleman on the OIS. I think he shot him, it's like 8 or 9 times he pulled the trigger. So I think these types of interactions need to be looked at when they're not actually armed with a gun. Why are they being shot with a gun? Especially fleeing. Thanks.
Next, we have Gina Viola.
Can you hear me?
Hi, yes. What items would you like to speak on?
Chief's report and public comment.
Okay, 2 minutes.
Each and every meeting, you show your whole selves with that Chief's report. The data says what we know. Despite how many officers you have roaming the city, you cannot keep us safe because you will not keep us safe. You cite all the gang violence of the past weekend, yet you had so many of your officers deployed on the west side to prevent folks from taking the freeway. Tons and tons of cops standing around, drinking coffee on their phones, making sure protesters weren't going to take the freeway. Meanwhile, you have other areas of the city where you claim gang violence is occurring on the regular. I mean, what is it that you're doing other than putting on a show here every single week so that this board can rubber stamp every lie you tell, And you lie all the time. You lied to city council. And when Jason just called you out on it, what did you do? You came off mute. Well, you're not on mute, but you actually interjected during public comment to speak for quite a long time because you know what you did was incorrect and you had to cover your ass. And the problem with that is Keenan Anderson's brother stood at that podium weeks ago and asked you to comment. And you had the city attorney tell him at great lengths while you were not able to reply to anything he was asking you. And yet when Jason very boldly points out a lie you told to city council, we all knew you were going to trot that dog out to every event you could. We knew it. And you did it. And now you just used a bunch of words so the rest of you sitting here can rubber stamp what the chief of police said. It'll never see the light of day in city council because you have them on lock too. But the point is, Keenan Anderson's brother said it like it is. I need to go back and find his comment and just play it for you week after week. You guys are useless. You are a disgrace. You are holding water for white supremacy. You are the watchdogs.
The next speaker, Gabriel Cabrera.
3 minutes, please. Good morning. My name is Gabriel Cabrera, and I am the former LAPD police officer that has spoken in front of the Police Commission twice before. First of all, I would like to pay gratitude and thank the Los Angeles Police Commission for recognizing my appeal pertaining to my illegal termination from the LAPD. I received your email informing me that you generated and forwarded a complaint on my behalf to the Office of the Inspector General. Thank you. But I emphasize once again that I did not have a fair chance nor due process afforded to me when the Board of Rights is set up where the Chief of Police makes and files the LAPD charges and complaint and tells and prejudges the evidences in advance to the supposed neutral board to find me guilty of everything and then tells and prejudges the board to impose a sentence the Chief of Police wants to impose on me. That is not fairness and is not due process. The Board of Right process pursuant to the LA City Charter was and is in violation of various constitutional rights and my due process rights. My termination was preordained due to my on-the-job injury and disability, a unwritten policy within the LAPD for decades. Before I appeared on my Board of Right trial in 2012, then Chief Beck, in writing, advised my board to find me guilty and terminate me before I appeared at my board. This was and is a blatant violation of my constitutional right of due process, which is covered under the 5th and 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Once again, the chief, the police, and internal affairs are not above the highest law of the land, the U.S. Constitution. No departmental order or edict can supersede the Constitution. A few years ago, the Police Commission reinstated another fired LAPD police officer, Robert William Stewart, nearly 70 years after his death. This opened a door or set a precedent for the Police Commission. I have only been separated from the department for 11 years. Since my constitutional right of due process was violated, I am asking and appealing to the Police Commission to erase my illegal termination and either reinstate me or award me some semblance of justice. You have the authority. The Police Commission, you, can facilitate justice without the influence of the Office of the Inspector General. You have the authority. Once again, this is not an anti-police statement. Without the police, we have no order, no society, no cities. I am simply addressing a specific malfeasance that was committed against me. In a nutshell, I served as a police officer for 15 years. I was injured, disabled while working as a police officer. I was terminated without cause, and my due process was violated. So after 15 years, I was disabled, I'm blackballed, and I received no pension. Does this seem fair? This is why I'm not going to stop my fight until I achieve justice. Thank you.
Next, we have Elisa Avalos.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Good morning. Yes. What items would you like to speak on?
All of them? Chief report and public comment.
3 minutes.
I want to start off by sending my condolences to the families that lost their loved ones in the Angel Gardens. But I also want to say that it's sad that this happened, but because of the officers that are in the Angel Gardens, crime rate has gone down a lot in Pacoima. And I want to, I don't want people to get upset because there was a sadly, lives were lost. But like the other caller said, there's good and there's bad policing and there's accidents. And I hope that you guys could do your job and find out what happened to those teenagers and how were their life taken. I also want to say that it would be great if LAPD can do their own events and not do events with city council member. Um, it's sad because they can do their own events, but LAPD never does their own events. We used to do cleanups with Pacoima Neighborhood Council and LAPD. We haven't done any of those lately. And I also want to thank Deputy Chief Hamilton. On October 7th at Whiteman Airport, there was an event, and I've been calling the Police Commissioner Board at CBAD meetings and asking for LAPD to do more outreach to the community, to outreach to get more officers hired because there is, a low count of officers. And Deputy Chief Hamilton, Eric Perez, and Officer Figueroa, they were there for over 2.5 hours, 3 hours, and I was surprised because there was some officers there that showed up, but they were there about 10, 15 minutes and they left. And everybody in that event, there was about 700 people there. They were so surprised and astonished to see that a deputy chief actually took the time to be there the whole time and actually engage with the community. And I feel that we need to do more of that because a lot of community members at first were afraid to go up to the table and have discussions with the police officers and the deputy chief, but we made it so comfortable that we handed out books to read, and it was a really good event. And I want to thank them for that. But I also want to say that when officers do get acknowledged, it would be great if they would be acknowledged by their community members and not only the board members or commissioner board members. And it'll be great if the commissioner board members could go to the CPAD meetings and do drive-alongs, not with supervisors, but with regular officers. And I just want to thank every officer that's there, that's doing their job. And please bring Mark Ross back, the deputy attorney, please. Thank you.
The next speaker, Hamid Khan.
Errol Southers started off this meeting about all the rules of decorum, and he said something about discussions in real time. Now, what does a discussion in real time mean at a body like a commission or a city council, right? That would mean that you have time to discuss an agenda item. You have time and an opportunity to express your views, your concerns, your analysis, the impact on the community, particularly when you're dealing with the most murderous police department in the country, right? But that's what discussion in real time is, that you make all your comments at the top of the meeting and then be gone. And, which brings me to this other agenda too, that everything is consent item. Because the city has consented for the largest increase in the budget. The city has consented in expanding mass surveillance all over the city. The city has consented that LAPD just doesn't even need a slap on the wrist, which brings me to another item about this robot dog. And we knew it, but they didn't have these meetings after that because of Christmas and New Year's, that, let's look at the history about it a little bit. So breaking the antennas on dash cams, not a big deal. Chronic offender program and people's life being devastated, this was an experiment. What else? Horace Frank, when he was the assistant chief pilot, lied right here about the use of facial recognition technology. And lo and behold, a few months later, LA Times comes out that LAPD had used facial recognition 30,000 times over the last 10 years. What else? Oh, yeah, 61% of the helicopter use just for our non-operational purposes, and then the robot dog for show and tell. So, it's just that whole culture of rubber stamp bodies, and to further, this is what they embody and this is what they legitimize, which then brings me to this whole thing about this bullshit about the retail crime operations and the expansion of the real-time crime center. I mean, of course, it wasn't until this December that the National Retail Federation comes out and says all of those claims are a lie. That amount between $45.4 billion loss and $90 billion loss was an accounting faux pas. This was how they do their inventory check. But of course, let's expand the real-time crime center. And lastly, TFANC, we sent a letter back in October, and we haven't heard back anything about the SAR audit. I mean, this is a response to the community where, they're supposed to do an audit every year, and the last time they did that was in 2019. So 5 years have passed, and when the community wants to know, what's the plan? What are you going to do about it, and what's going on? Zip, zero, no commentary at all. So that's how 2024 looks like.
Next, we have Angelina.
All items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Today is National Law Enforcement Appreciation Day, so I just want to give my appreciation to each and every officer who's out there who puts on their uniform and risks their lives, and every day it's unpredictable what they might face. And just thank you for protecting us, and may God protect each one of you so you can make it home to your families each and every day. I want to give a shout out to Foothill Division. Just thank you to all the officers there who we work closely with, each and every senior lead officer. Thank you for engaging with the community. Continue to do that. Keep fighting the good fight. Don't give up. There's more of us who support you than who are against you, but we do need your help. And a lot of times we do feel helpless when we call 911 for help or just the response time. And I know that's really the problem is with the leadership, and there needs to be a change. And we as community members are crying out for a change. We want the same service that, Glendale Police Department offers, or all these other departments, that they have a faster response time. So I'm not sure why it's so long to get help with LAPD if it's just so big of a department. I know you're short 1,000 officers. One thing, if you have fired LAPD officers for, illegal termination, such as this, I think there were 6 of them that didn't take the COVID vaccine, or didn't want to be tested, I think with the Bluestone, you should rehire those officers. You could start with that for one thing. And we as parents were scared, for our families, for our children, and it's not if, but when we are going to be victims of crime. So we want stronger leadership. We need trust, integrity, honesty, transparency within LAPD. And that's all I have to say today, but God bless each one of you. Thank you so much.
The next speaker is Matios Kadei.
Good morning. My name is Matios with the Stop LAPD Spine Coalition. I just want to touch on the chief's report first. It was such a load of shit. The chief said there was a double-digit reduction in shootings in CSP sites. No span of time given. Double-digit can range from 10 to 99. It's a meaningless statement. But, it is something meant to bolster the LAPD's image. But, he does go on to say and share these horrible anecdotes of community violence in order to fearmonger. And that's the type of fearmongering, the type of displays of violence that we've come to expect as budget season comes closer. And so I just wanted to point out that inconsistency. We also saw that with this praise for a decrease in violent crimes against unhoused people, which is hypocritical and glaring considering how the LAPD sweeps and cites unhoused people to oblivion. And, let's not forget how a few weeks ago, in the face of unhoused people being killed, being shot, more, leveraged this violence against unhoused people to advocate for increased surveillance capabilities, right? All while, even today, using the language of dangerous encampments, cleaner streets, this type of dehumanizing language that facilitates an environment in order to enact violence against unhoused people. And so that really just kind of shows the intention of this board. It is a hollow board meant to control a narrative to get what we want. So even when leveraging this violence against unhoused people, a few weeks ago, you praised Beverly Hills for their surveillance capabilities, right? A city that's been condemned for its surveillance capabilities being called a smarter city. And, these surveillance capabilities in Beverly Hills, they haven't kept anybody safe. Their surveillance arsenal has been used, and this has been documented by the National Lawyers Guild in LA, that Beverly Hills PD has been stopping perceived activists outside of Beverly Hills following pro-Palestine protests, seizing their vehicles and assets. And there's no doubt in my mind that that's what these surveillance capabilities are being used for, right? To suppress dissent against police. And we have an ALPR donation on the agenda today. We've seen ALPRs thrown up for a number of reasons: to address sex trafficking, to address organized retail theft, now hit and runs. It's surprising to me, Errol Southers, that you brought up this piece of state legislation on speeding cameras like you didn't know about it. It's been all over the news. But this is another expansion of automated license plate readers. And what's at play here is the creation of a surveillance state in order to track people for all these different reasons. And we can see that the goal is to squash dissent. We at the coalition, we facilitate community research by getting public records from this body, but that's come to a halt, right? We have a PRA on badge numbers from February of 2023 that hasn't been addressed. We have one on Boston Dynamics emails around these robot dogs that the LAPD touts and shows from March 8th. That hasn't been produced. One on a TikTok ban, communications regarding the TikTok ban legislation from April. We have 4 open CIPRA legislation or lawsuits that haven't been addressed. So this board, this department isn't committed to transparency. It's a clear lie that's apparent in the inconsistencies within what you've said today and how you share information. We still haven't gotten our SARS audit. So this board's a sham. I yield the rest of my time.
The next speaker is Zachary Sherwin.
Okay, I want to timestamp 10:35 a.m. As the first mention in this meeting today of the existence of community meetings, let alone any mention of the specific upcoming one. And it was by a caller that community meetings were mentioned, not by anybody on this board. Why don't we know the location of the community meeting on the 23rd? Why didn't you open this meeting by telling us when that meeting is going to be, where it's going to be, providing any details we need to know about it, doing everything you can to make sure that information is out there in the world? Seems like a reasonable way to open the meeting to me. What conclusions are we to draw from the fact that nobody even mentioned it for over an hour and it was a caller when it finally came up? At the November 21st meeting of this commission, Mr. Southers, you told us you were going to look into that suspicious activity reporting program audit. Can we get a follow-up on that so we know that it didn't slip through the cracks? And for the record, I want to note that I read this same talking point verbatim in my comments on December 5th and December 19th. Do you care to comment? The chief showed us that you are allowed to respond to us when you decide that you are, so I'll invite you to do so now. Alrighty. What an interesting moment with that robot dog exchange. Jason had to say it. None of you got out ahead of that one. Southers, you were asking questions about jaywalking, repeated follow-up questions, but no mention of the robot dog. Chief, sometimes when we ask you questions, almost all the time, you hide behind saying, I can't respond to that, the rules don't permit me. But then when somebody gets you, suddenly that rule changes, and you do feel like you're free to respond and make a statement about it. Though, then we ask a super reasonable clarifying question about it, like, well, what action did you take? Suddenly, the clam shuts again. It's all just so made up and arbitrary and seat of the pants and improvised, and I think it speaks to the illegitimacy of this meeting. Which brings me to my final point, which is the fact that before the pandemic, we were coming to these meetings, and the way that it worked was that we didn't have to give all of our public comment in 3 minutes at the top of the meeting. We would get up to 2 minutes after each agenda item, which we would get to hear a report on, and then each person would get unlimited reps of 2 minutes. As many items as you put in a comment card for. Then the pandemic came, and the chief got reamed out for hours on Zoom, and John Oliver put that guy telling you to choke on his cock on his program, and then everything changed and it's never gone back. And we've never got an explanation of why that's the case. The old way took more time, but we stayed in the meetings. It increased the level of democratic participation. You guys are supposedly so committed to free speech that last time you met, you tolerate people.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, next speaker.
The next speaker, please, is Corey.
I yield the rest of
let's see. Okay. So, Corey Schmidt, for the record, all items. Let's see. So today we are talking about a couple of things. A lot of donations, I see. But let's see. So we're talking about a reward. Rewards are for, what are they for? I would say maybe a bounty, maybe something like that. But I was wondering, do they have bounties for politicians? I was wondering. I mean, I think that would. Just because they're politicians doesn't mean that they are not doing things that are illegal. Let's see. So we have a donation, and a donation. Okay, so let's see. So donation for a license plate recognition camera. So is this like a new thing that they're doing these days? Is it, I've heard about this, that they are putting license plate recognition where it basically scans your car's license plate as you're driving. So basically the cop just has instant info on everybody all around them. I think it's getting into our privacy thing. I talked about that before about the robot dogs. Privacy is a big thing to me, so I'm not sure that I'm a fan of this. I'm not sure if anybody else is a fan. Let's see. So there is a donation towards El Rey, I guess. El Rey in Spanish is the king. So I will definitely take that donation. Thank you very much. Let's see. And then unintentional discharge. That was the one that kind of got me. I was like, so unintentional discharge. So is that a thing? I was wondering. First thing that pops into my mind is Superbad. Remember how they're in the background and they're having fun drinking and stuff, and they're shooting at the stop sign, trying to get it in between the zero and the stop sign. Just wondering if that's what that is considered, if that's what's going on. I don't know. I just was trying to understand what an unintentional discharge is and if that's acceptable. But yeah, that's everything that I had to say. Thank you.
The next speaker, please, is Megan.
I just wanted to reiterate a couple points that have already been made. A couple weeks ago, there's people who frequent this meeting who use racial and homophobic slurs regularly. Sometimes they're kicked out, sometimes they aren't. And there are people who frequent this meeting who speak at times that they're not allowed to. And they're always kicked out for disrupting the meeting. And I guess I'm confused why using hate speech is not considered disrupting the meeting. Southers, you said you couldn't do anything about it because it's protected speech. I think that's debatable, but you are missing the point. You've set many rules for this meeting which don't have anything to do with the law. Certainly it's not against the law to stand in a public meeting, to take care of your child, or really for any reason. It's not against the law to have water in a public meeting. But you made that rule just the same. So why is there a rule about standing and a rule about disrupting, but no rule about hate speech? Certainly this department has a horribly racist history and present of targeting and humiliating and traumatizing Black people. So I guess being wishy-washy and inconsistent on whether or not people can use racial slurs is just on brand. You're incredibly consistent about kicking out people who are pointing out the hypocrisies and lies of this body and you as an individual in real time. Again, you've stated multiple times that you don't respond to comments, I guess, except when you do. Except when you have an answer that you think makes you look righteous, although the fact that we had to hear about that egregious policy violation from a community member and not from you. So thank you, as always, to Black Lives Matter, Stop LAPD Spying, and community members for doing your jobs and showing up here to actually ask for and provide accountability from this corrupt department. Thank you.
And the final speaker, please, Akili.
First, I want to thank Jason for calling in and uplifting that egregious policy that we had all known was going to happen, but nobody, when it happened, nobody actually said, okay, it happened, and see, I told you so. There were two things that stood out to me in the chief's report. The first one was 34 and 16. 34 people shot, 16 people killed. And that was an increase. There was no questions about it, no concern about it, no like, why is there an increase from last year and the year before? And where does this rank us among people being shot and killed in the nation, among the highest? That concerned me, that disturbed me. And I would have wanted more of an explanation. I would want us to look at, why is that happening? We have, and you've talked about this unendingly, this de-escalation policy, but yet we wind up with more people shot and killed than any other people in any other the city in the country. Why is there no at least concern about how many people we shoot and kill? Why is there no questioning about that? Why is there no, let's investigate how it is we moved from 31 last year to 34 this year? And why is there no concern about the fact that there's no accountability when that happens? So we shoot 34 people, 16 of them die, and I bet you I can almost guess how many of them were black and how many of them were brown. That doesn't disturb us. That's just like, well, that's just how it is. 2024, let's move on. And so I'm asking this commission, one, you may want to take in consideration the number of people, the number of Los Angeles who are being shot, and the number of people who are being killed by this department.
That will be the end of public comment. Before we move on to the consent agenda items, I'll make the announcement at the end of public comments, as I have done twice before. The January 23rd meeting will be at South Bureau. It will be at the Watts Labor Community Action Committee. It will be 10950 South Central Avenue, and it will be at from 6 p.m. We'll now move on to consent agenda items. Watts Labor, it will be at the Watts Labor Action Committee. If you stop yelling and listen, you know where it's going to be. The Watts Labor Community Action Committee meeting building on South Central Avenue. We will now move on to item number 3 on the agenda. Are there any questions or comments on items A through D on the consent agenda item?
Can we pull item C, please?
Item C, Commissioner Garcia? None? So I will move that we approve the recommendation for board actions on items A, B, and D. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We'll move on to item 3C. Commissioner Calanche? Question?
Just wanted, Chief, just wanted more information about the license plate recognition camera. There isn't a lot of detail, so what it just says to be used for criminal investigation. Can you just provide more information about what it does, when it will be used, purpose, everything?
Yes, just a moment. We have a person identified who should be either on the line or on Zoom. Thank you.
Hi, it's Commander Riley from Office Operations. I can answer that. So that camera is going to be used like all the other LPRs. It's actually going to be in addition to the additional cameras that we can be getting. So it will be out in public.
And as a further clarification, in our efforts of crime reduction, we recognize just recently that there are individuals who are in stolen vehicles or involved in violent crimes that move about the city. An automated license plate reader is a surveillance camera, for lack of a better term, in a public place. It's not in a covert location. It's not obscured but from public view, and it monitors vehicle traffic. And it alerts the department in instances in which wanted vehicles, many times for violent crimes and other more serious offenses, are in that area. It also allows the organization, when we identify vehicles that are involved in such violent crime, to go back and identify where they were last seen, perhaps where they're parked, where they normally would reside. And so in our presentation that Deputy Chief McMahon made a couple weeks ago, we talked about our outreach on real-time crime centers and also the adoption of the department's grant on organized retail theft. And part of that is going to fund some 260 of these cameras. Now, that's going to help bolster the department's already use of these cameras in locations across the city. In that presentation, we mentioned the public-private partnership that will be dependent on in order to build this network in communities that are desirous. Not communities that are opposed to such use, but those that are supportive. And this is one of the first donations, if you will, from a local business community and community itself that is asking to be able to fund and support the organization's efforts to improve the safety of that community. And that's what this one license plate reader represents. Commander Liam, is there anything else you'd add to that?
No, sir, I think you covered it.
So just to clarify, so this is coming, say, from a Hollywood area business that is wanting this type of tool in order to reduce crime, and then it's just the funding is funneled through the foundation, police foundation. Is that the way it works?
So the Los Angeles Police Foundation is a 501c3 organization. Its purpose is to provide equipment, training, support for both technology as well as training and development of our personnel, as well as support of youth programming and other efforts that are currently beyond the capabilities of the city to fund through established budgetary processes. This is, the foundation organizes various philanthropic entities as well as organizations, businesses included, that wish to have such participation. And so when areas learn of, say, a Chamber of Commerce or a Business Improvement District or a local business or an individual philanthropic donor that wishes to donate funding for a specific purpose, if that purpose is consistent with the department's mission, then we'll review that, and then what is before you today is the documentation about the purpose and use of it, and how we believe it'll help us as a department go about in improving the safety of communities. So this is the mechanism in which we follow. What the foundation provides for that business is that when that donation is made through the foundation, it becomes it's a tax deductible because it's funding a nonprofit, it's funding a public entity for a matter of public safety. That likely would occur anyways with the business or the individual providing. But this allows a more structured process. For the department, it's also important that we have a mechanism to ensure that we're screening these individuals. The foundation, for instance, it does not accept donations from all those that, or does not organize and work with all those that may wish to donate to this department.
And so thank you for that. A follow-up question about the actual tool, the license plate reader. How often does it require some sort of maintenance or update that wouldn't necessarily be paid by the foundation?
So this is a prepaid subscription that is committing for, Commander Liam, do you have the period? Is it 1 or 3 years or 5 years? I think it may be a 5-year.
I don't see the period now. Although Innovation Management Division reviewed this technology and a specific one that complements our system, but let me look real quick.
On page 1 of the solution, it indicates an annual subscription information, annual subscription with warranty and software services included, and that's for a 5-year period.
5 years, yeah.
So it wouldn't require any more funding for those 5 years for this specific tool?
That's correct.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I would move that we approve the department's report and accept the donation. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Commission will now recess for closed session. Thank you very much.
The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss item numbers 4A and 4A1 and 2 in accordance with Government Code 54957.
The commission has concluded a closed session and will have a readout report from the executive director, Mr. Tiefang.
Item 4A, 1, officer involved shooting number 005-23. Commission adopted the recommendations of the chief of police on a 3-0 vote. Those recommendations were tactics administrative disapproval, 2 police officer 2s. Drawing and exhibiting in policy, 2 police officer 2s. Unintentional discharge, administrative disapproval, negligent discharge, 1 police officer 2. Lethal use of force in policy, 1 police officer 2, rounds 1 and 2. Out of policy, administrative disapproval, 1 police officer 2, rounds 3 through 8. Item 4A2, non-tactical unintentional discharge number 021-23. Commission adopted the recommendations of the Chief of Police on a 3-0 vote. Recommendations were tactics, tactical debrief, 1 police officer 2. Unintentional discharge, administrative disapproval, negligent discharge, 1 police officer 2. That concludes the report out.
Thank you, sir. And with that, I would move that we adjourn today's meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion, meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.